Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who've been watching the videos and liking and subscribing. I'd also like to thank Ray for doing the rifle swap back at the end of October so I could get this, and also for Kenny for allowing us to come and visit. So I hope you boys are doing all right. Today I'm doing this is my overview of the BSA R12 CLX Pro regulated. Now, I had this rifle for just over a month. Unfortunately, I've not been too well, which is why I've not been able to do a video, and I've mustered up the energy to do one today. And I'm going to talk about things I like about this rifle from having shot it. I've not shot it much, but I can tell you my experience with it and talk about things like how I found the stock compared to some of the other rifles I've owned that you can see from the channel, in terms of this rifle compared to its predecessor, the R10. It's obviously got a cocking lever as opposed to a bolt, but I know that since then they've brought out a bolt version on the R12. But I'll talk a bit about the cocking mechanism and how I found it compared to some of the other rifles I've got. I'll talk about the trigger, the barrel as well, more about the shroud as well, how I found that. I'll talk about the bottle, mention something about that, and the magazine, and then I'll show you some Chrono results and some groups. So looking at it, first off, I really do like the stock. I know it's a Manelli stock, so you can't go too far wrong. One thing I will comment on is the cheek piece. Now, I do like, it's a kind of tale of two cities here. Whilst I do like this rubberized cheek piece, which is adjustable, I would prefer an option to have potentially, and again, this is probably down to cost, whether or not it's feasible to get essentially the wood that would be replaced here on an option to be added over here. But that's not to say that this piece of hard rubber is comfortable to rest your cheek against, which it is. I also really like the stippling, both on the grip and on the forefront over here. And I shoot off a bag, so with my left hand, I normally hold it over here. I use a sniper's fist, and when I do the sniper's fist, I am tempted to run my fingers on this etched BSA logo over here, which is really nice. And another thing about the stock that I really like, to be fair, I like this going back to the R10, is the two-tone colour. So you've got over here this really nice light kind of brown, and then it goes into this darker over here. I also like at the bottom this, again, this graduation. It's just design that I've always been fond of on the R10, and I'm kind of pleased to see that they carried it over here. But truth be told, I actually wanted to get the black pepper version of this, and I'd be very keen to know if you do have the walnut stock, if it's possible to get the black pepper stock and be able to attach it. So if there's anyone from BSA watching, please drop a line onto, drop a comment onto the chat of this video so that I could reply and get in touch and look at options for purchasing a black pepper stock. So moving on, the big deal about this rifle is that not only is it regulated, and it's obviously 12 shots as opposed to 10, it's got this cocking lever, which compared to the other rifles I've got, it's good. I mean, it's not the smoothest I've tried, believe it or not, compared to some of the other rifles, but it is smooth. It's got a really nice spring-loaded the first stage, so to speak, which then allows you to then click back, and there, it's now cocked. It's worth commenting as well. I didn't find this very obvious, but I don't know if you can see it over here. There's a little red dot. Now, that red dot indicates that now the rifle is primed and ready to fire. And I didn't notice that. It's not very obvious until I watched a couple of videos and this was made obvious, I was like, okay, now I see and now it's there. But to me, it's not very obvious. But going back to the cocking lever, I mean, it's this section's nice and it rotates as well. And then once it's cocked, you can essentially bring it forward and there's a nice pushback to it, the cocking lever meeting the stock, which is indented over here, which is nice. And then it's ready to fire. So when it does index a pellet, I have found it to be smooth. I haven't found it to be stiff, nor have I found the pellet probe to catch the skirt on the pellets. But that's the pellets that I've been using, which have been a combination of, to be fair, and again, I've pellet tested this. The best ones I've found are JSB Exacts 8.52, I believe, or QIS domed pellets. I think they're 8.44 as well. I'll talk about the pellets when it comes to the groups. But now the rifle's cocked and ready to fire, we'll talk about the trigger. And again, I found the trigger compared to the other rifles I've got comparable on a good stage, in that the first, it's a 2-stage trigger, and I like the first stage is definitely pronounced over here like that. There we go. And then it's got a crisp let off for the second stage. And I've got other rifles where either the trigger's been very sensitive, non-adjustable, or it's been very, very heavy, and or it's been difficult to adjust. But right out of the box, so to speak, in terms of how I've got this, I'm happy with this trigger as it is. Moving on, another thing I want to talk about is the barrel itself, which is a cold hammer forge barrel, but there's some good accuracy from here. It's not as, believe it or not, it's not as accurate as some of the other rifles I've got, and I'll say that because I'll show you some groups from one of the latest rifles I've got right at the very end of this video, just so you can see how comparable that was out of the box versus how this is. And again, at a short distance, believe it or not, and I'm going to get some scrutiny. I'm going to get some comments on the channel saying that the distance I'm shooting at initially is very, very short, but it's the only distance I've got at the moment to test on, unfortunately, and given the opportunity, I would like to test on larger distances. But coming to the shroud, it does definitely quieten down the snap, but one thing I'm not fond of is I really wish that this was very easily detachable or extended slightly, so you could detach this front section and put your own silencer on without having to remove the entire shroud. So that's something to consider. I want to also talk about the bottle. I wish this was carbon fiber and larger in size than having this aluminium bottle, which to me, I can't remember the size, to be fair, how many cc's it holds, but BSA reckons it's probably about 200 shots, is it? I think 200 shots in 177, but I don't fill up my rifle to max. And to be fair, I think I probably get about 130, 140 good shots. So a larger bottle in aluminium would be definitely preferable for the future. One thing I do like is the manometer at the bottom over here rather than at the front of the rifle. And again, I've got some of the premium rifles where they're still doing them at the front as opposed to sensibly underneath, which is safe. But I was particularly fond of this dust cover in the fact that it's circular surrounding the manometer, and all you have to do is push this section over here and it comes off very cleanly and easily. And it's also magnetized, so there's a magnet over here, and then it just simply clicks back in place. Really nice and clicky as well. Over there you go. Let's go over here. The trigger guard, just very quickly as well, let's talk about this while we've got it flicked over, is got this cutout again. Other rifles I've got, premium rifles don't have the cutout and you have to come in at an angle. This one has a nice cutout over here, making it easily accessible to adjust the trigger to your specification. So I also, whilst we're talking about this section, let's talk about the magazines. So a good thing is that you get not one but two magazines. However, they're 12-shot mags, and other manufacturers, premium manufacturers, and I would class BSA as a premium manufacturer, even though they make some budget rifles under their Gamma range, and some of the other BSAs can be slightly budget, but this isn't a budget rifle, it's up there. But 12 shots, to me, I think you could be a lot more expansive in holding more shots, or designing magazines which hold more shots. And there are other manufacturers that are more elaborate with their magazines. Even some of the Turkish rifles I recently saw, I think it was a Kral magazine which came outwards, extended outwards. And I know the FXs, they can hold quite a lot, between 22 and 38, I think. And also, I think the day states are 14. Just again, not forgetting AGTs, I think they're about 15 in 177. These are two 12 shots in 177. But it swings and roundabouts. So the nice thing about these magazines are they're simple to load. None of this kind of turn the entire magazine and then put your first pellet in and then rotate them back, or turn it upside down and put the pellet in reverse and then flip it over. It's just simply put a pellet in, rotate, put a pellet in, rotate. However, a couple of things to note. First of all, the number over here is a good thing, because as that protrudes outwards, you can see how many shots you got left. But one thing I don't like is that it starts on 1, so that when you shot your last shot, sometimes I've actually been confused thinking there's one more shot left. Rather than it starts on 0, then you load and it goes on 1, and then after this, it would have been nice if that went to 0. Second thing is, depending on the skirt size, you have to, and again, I've seen other people comment on this on YouTube, you have to push the pellet in with your thumb or your finger, or I've got a very small set of tweezers with, rather than essentially tong ends, they're very, very pointed, so they go really nicely in the center of a 177 pellet without damaging the skirt. So I use those very delicately to push those in if I need to make sure that the skirt isn't damaged, because sometimes when you're rotating it, depending on the skirt size, you can rotate and suddenly damage the skirt on the outer casing of the magazine. That's something to consider. I actually, as well, this is quite superficial, I liked this tone of blue that they used for 177, and I also liked the tone of blue that they used for 22 in red, which was nice. So for me, having two magazines it's a good thing, but I wish they were larger. I also wish that they were a little bit more accessible. Maybe a lid to flip open and drop the magazines. I've seen speed load, other manufacturers where you can do that, where you can take the lid off and you can get speed loaders and then quickly load them, and then away you go. I'm not fond of loading magazines, and I've said that on other videos that I've made. One thing to note as well, just whilst we're talking about loading, there's no single shot tray with this. It's just magazine only, which again, something to consider. And also, in terms of filling it, you have to use a probe rather than a Foster fill. And I had to attach this so it goes onto my Foster fill, which is attached to my dive bottle. So this adapter is useful, but something to consider, having a simple Foster adapter, so you can just attach it onto the protrusion at the end of the rifle. Would have been good. But those are gripes. I haven't talked about the sling studs because I don't use them, because I shoot. I don't go hunting. I go target shooting. But in fairness, you can use the front one and attach a Picatinny adapter if you want to. I haven't talked about the safety catch, because the safety on the back over here, it's nothing to shout out about. You know, it's functional. It does what it says on the tin. I have noticed, though, that there's a more of a pronounced click going into safe than there is going to fire mode. So there's more of a dull, deadened sound when you go to fire. And I suppose that's good for if you've taken the rifle out hunting. And I haven't talked about the adjustable rear section because I've left it in default state. Is there anything else I haven't talked about? Over here, something to consider. Some of the other manufacturers are doing MOA, 20 MOA Picatinny rails as opposed to dovetail. And some manufacturers are doing a combination of both. So that's a consideration. I like the ones that do 20 MOA in Picatinny and or both, the option for having either or. As you can see, I've put my right on 5 to 25 by 50 on here. Nice marriage of this rifle with this scope. So those are the main points that I wanted to kind of overview from my time with this compared to some of the other rifles I've got. Just trying to think, is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? How about the Chrono results? We can have a look at those now, I think. So when I first got this back at the end of October, one of the first things I did was put a Chrono on it just to see what it was spitting out and see how good is this regulator. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I don't know if you can see over here, I put 70 shots through it. It's got a spread of 0.8, standard deviation of 0.2. And this regulator was doing its job. There were times where I was a little bit trigger happy, so the deviation spread. But then when I started taking my time in between each shot even, it was doing its job pretty well. So again, just to kind of make a note that there are other rifles I've had with regs, and depending on the reg, there's some obviously benchmark regulator manufacturers that are excellent in terms of providing the performance that you want from a rifle, and sometimes they're not part of the manufacturer's deal. That people essentially take them and do them after they've purchased them. But I think for what you get with this BSA, the regulator is good. It's doing its job. Let's talk about the groups. So, when I first got this, again, I'm going to get people commenting on the yardage, but as I mentioned, it was the only place I could go to do the testing. 22.5 yards, not very far, but it's a good way to see, look, can this thing put pellet on pellet? And first of all, when I got it, I didn't clean it, and I found that it wasn't doing what I wanted in terms of pellet on pellet. But to be fair, I started going down the pellet test route. So I tried with smaller skirts. I always go to default. First of all, can the rifle shoot with JSB exacts 8.44 grain 4.51s? I would say no over here. Then I tried the 5.2s, and again, the performance still wasn't great. So I'm going to flip over and show you. This is what I was seeing through the scope over here. Those two rows. And then I cleaned the barrel, and with the 5.1s, I was getting slightly tighter groups over here. So those two rows again. And then Let's try the next one. I tried the QIS domed over here, and these are pretty good groups. The 8.48s, there we go, 8.48s. I said 8.44 before. And again, the groups were getting super tight. And it's a shame, really, because I wanted to get some of these QIS domed, but nowhere had them. So I went and stuck to the 8.44, 4.52s, and I was getting groups that I was happy with. So let's show you what I saw through the scope. Through the scope, I saw that for the QISs. Again, I was really happy with that when I did that. And then these, again, 6-shot groups, 6 shots for the rest of them, all for the JSBs, 8.44, 4.52s. And just to put some context to it, there's my small fingernail. And again, easily goes under that, which means easily 5 B groups, which you would expect at that yardage. But again, I use that as a default, to be fair, and then given the opportunity, push it out to see, look, if it can't put pellet on pellet at that yardage, then there's something wrong. So if it can, then that's a good sign. Great, time to push it. So I got that. I'll show you another set of groups. Again, I started pushing it out. I went to the local range and pushed it out between 25 and 30 yards and got these. Again, with the same pellets over here. And then these. That's the latest set of groups. 5 shots over here. Like that. So, overall, I would say that I do like this rifle. I would say that it's not my most accurate rifle in my collection, based on, to be fair, some of the other instant accurate shot groups that I've managed to retain from out the box shooting from some of the other rifles, or even when I've second-handed them, like the Vulcan 2. When I did the trade with Marky Boy, that thing blew me away. I couldn't believe that when I was shooting that. It was amazing. And also my Red Wolf, when I got that, to be fair, I purchased that new, and you've seen some of the groups on that. That was literally spitting pellet on pellet. I was amazed with that. That doesn't mean to say that I don't like this rifle. I do. I really do like this rifle. I like what BSA have done. I like the fact that they've put a cocking lever on here as opposed to a bolt. Not to dismiss the fact that the bolt action that they did on the R10, and I've tried the R10, it's really nice, really smooth. But I do prefer the side lever cocking mechanism on the action over here. And it just, for me, I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag, really. If on the rifle the bolt mechanism feels right and suits the rifle, then I love it. So I love the bolt action on my Griffin, for example. And it depends on the rifle, really. So if the bolt fits, wear it. So I love the bolt on the Griffin, but I can't imagine my Griffin having a cocking lever, if that makes any sense. Yet I can't imagine a bolt on my Red Wolf. So yeah, as weird as I am, I can't say that I love a bolt or I love a lever. It depends on the rifle and it depends how it feels. So on this lever feels correct to me, and that's why I do like it. And I was surprised by the stock. I didn't think I'd like it, but I do. The walnut stock feels great, but that doesn't mean to say that given an opportunity at a later date or any time, I could have the opportunity to pick up a black pepper stock, which again I'm fond of that color, and you'll see why in my next video, because I do have another rifle that I want to showcase based on the groups that I managed to get with it, which I'll give you a sneaky peek, and I won't tell you what that rifle is, but these are the groups that I got with the latest rifle, which I will be doing a video on soon. And this was pretty much out of the box, new, and I did 2 pull-throughs. It literally was clean after that. I took 3 shots to zero it. I used, I'm trying to remember now, quickly I tried actually 4.52s because where I went to person suggested trying larger skirt sizes, so I thought I'll try with the 5.2s first and see where it goes. And these are the groups I got out of the box. And this was at the 22.5 yard, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of if a rifle can do this, which you would expect at 22.5, then it means, okay, it can do some good stuff late at distance, and let's see what it can do at distance and challenge the rifle. And given that opportunity, I definitely want to do that. So again, look at that, 5 shots, same hole. Some of these groups were 5 shot, same hole. And that one, 5 shot, same hole. But this is a to be continued, and check this rifle out in my next video. But for now, I hope you have liked this, my overview on the BSA CLX Pro, BSA R10 CLX Pro regulated. Thank you very much for watching, and as I mentioned, for liking and subscribing. And apologies, I've not been able to make vids. I've not been well recently, but I will try and make the videos as and when I can. But stay safe and look after yourselves, and I will see you all very, very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.